Hello, Eagles Nation. Vincent Foes here, and welcome to a Week 1 Eagles chat where the Eagles were able to get the 24-20 victory over the Dallas Cowboys. And I want to emphasize the word cow in Cowboys because that is what Dallas and the rest of the NFL sees when they look at the face of Jerry Jones. And man, that was a nasty one. I wonder who put that on my script. Oh, yeah, it was me. Anyway, moving on, make sure to like and subscribe to the Eagles Chat YouTube channel, as well as following us on Instagram at Chat Eagles, where you can find daily updates on your birds. You can also find our Instagram in the description of this Eagles chat video. But now let's get right into it. And we're going to first start off with the injury update. Now, those of you who watched yesterday's game from the beginning, yeah, it didn't necessarily start in the greatest of ways for the Eagles, as they lost two key players with under the first 10 seconds of the game. One was because of a stupid reason. The other one was because of a pretty severe injury. And the first guy we have up here on the injury update is fullback Ben Van Sumeren. And the unfortunate news came out, yes, he will be out for the remainder of the season with a torn patella tendon. So definitely something very unfortunate to see, as Van Sumeren was a guy who was rising up in the ranks of the Eagles as someone that was really improving in a big way. And I was really expecting to see a good season from him. It's very unfortunate to see him get injured on the first play of the season, literally on the kickoff. So definitely unfortunate to see. We wish him a speedy recovery, and hopefully he'll be back and ready to go next season. Hopefully that is for sure. But the next guy we have up here on our injury update is another key player, but this time on the offense, Landon Dickerson, who unfortunately was dealing with some back issues coming into this week. But the only unfortunate thing was they still seem to be haunting him. Now, this past week before the game, Landon Dickerson was kind of on limited participation, but as the game got closer, he was able to move up to full participation, but was still kind of having some little issues. But as the game progressed yesterday, it was clear something was bothering him. And then the second half, well, after that hour-long lightning delay that the Eagles had, well, let's just say, yeah, Landon Dickerson did not come back on the field. He didn't come back and stretch with the team. And seeing how early on it is on the season, they're not going to want to risk anything, no matter how big or how small the injury may be. He's dealing with issues with his back. The Eagles are not going to want to push anything too much, especially with a key guy like that on your offensive line. So hopefully he'll be able to have a good recovery, and we'll keep you updated as the week goes on, as more information comes out. But the final guy we have up here on the injury update is safety Sidney Brown, who unfortunately got injured as well in the second half and during yesterday's game after an incompletion. So we don't have specific details on this injury, but as the week goes on, we'll continue to monitor it very, very closely. Again, any updates, make sure to follow us on our Instagram page. We'll try our best to keep you guys as updated as possible with your birds and the injury updates as the week goes on and as we get closer to the Week 2 matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. So make sure to follow us on our Instagram page to stay updated. But now moving on off the injury update and getting into the nitty-gritty on how the birds necessarily played. And yes, we're going to first start off with the ejection of Jalen Carter. Now, I know I'm not going to spend too much time on this, as I know a lot of people have already ranted on this. And this is a certain situation where I'm just going to say one thing. Grow up. I don't care what happened. Of course, as the game was going on, the announcers were kind of analyzing it a little bit more, and they found out, well, Dak Prescott was actually the first one to spit. And still, that does not change my opinion. To Jalen Carter, grow up. This type of situation cannot happen, especially in week 1 of the season, and you are the most important piece on that defensive line, practically almost probably the most important piece, or one of the most important pieces on the defense in general, and you're one of the best at your position in the whole NFL. This type of stuff can't happen. You're not a rookie anymore. You weren't a rookie last year. This is something where you need to get that leadership mentality. You know, guys like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham are gone. Now you have guys like this Jalen Carter, who need to step up. And the action that happened yesterday was not a way in stepping up. I don't care who did it first. It kind of turns into like a little bit of a 2-year-old type of match where, well, it doesn't matter. Dak, he started it. He spit first. I don't care. This is a situation you need to have leadership. I don't care who spit first. You need to be the bigger man. I understand Dak may have been saying some things to egg him on a little bit, as Jalen Carter did walk over the line of scrimmage to the Dallas huddle. And Dak spit, but he spit towards kind of the ground. It wasn't necessarily really at Jalen Carter, but then, of course, Carter responded with spitting right on him, and the judge was right there to see it happen and was automatically thrown out of the game. So stuff that just can't happen. And Jalen Carter said, quote, it was a mistake that happened on my side and it just won't happen again. Well, I better hope so. And I hope it doesn't happen again. And I'm sure whatever punishment happens with the Jalen Carter, I'm sure Nick Sirianni, they'll keep it behind closed doors. Of course, that's what any coach would do. They're not going to want to expose their player out in public. If there's a punishment, you're probably not going to hear anything about it. It's going to be behind closed doors. Matter of fact, it's really none of our business. It's between the coach and it's between the player who committed this unfortunate offense, if you want to call it that. But yeah, definitely not great to see out of Carter. But yeah, how much did this hurt the Eagles? Well, it did quite a little bit. Carter's absence, well, it led to two big-time Javonte Williams rushing touchdowns, and it was, yes, 119 rushing yards. And again, this is coming from a team that's run game isn't necessarily that good. Dallas does not have a good run game whatsoever, and this is what happens. You lose a key guy like this, it completely changed their entire game plan, and this was something that Prescott even said, where he said, quote, it changed our plan and our blocking scheme. So this is something where, yeah, little things like that will change pretty much everything. As I'm sure Dallas was coming in being prepared to be locked in on the pass game. I'm sure they'd run it now and then, obviously, to change things up. But I'm sure they came into this game being completely locked onto their pass game and saying, well, if we're going to get anywhere, we're going to have to use the pass. We're going to have to use short passes, things like that. Well, yeah, it changed, let's just say, very, very quickly, and something that that Dallas certainly made the adjustment. And again, two big-time rushing touchdowns by Javonte Williams, 119 rushing yards. Yeah, I think that kind of explains itself in something that, again, just can't happen. It just can't happen. There's nothing much else to say to that, and it is what it is. Hopefully, it just ends up being a fine. In situations like this, I think it is probably just going to end up in a fine. I don't think he's going to be suspended. I'm pretty sure he's not going to be suspended, but again, who knows? But it should most likely just be a fine, and we'll see, hopefully, Jalen Carter back out against Kansas City come week 2. But now moving on to the rest of the defense, and yes, we have our defensive player of the game spotlight. And this comes a guy that I definitely have to talk about right here without a question. And it is the linebacker, Zack Baun, the guy who's been absolutely lights out ever since he came to Philadelphia last year from the New Orleans Saints. And I guess I can kind of say from the New Orleans Saints bench, as he wasn't necessarily doing a lot over there, if you remember that whole situation. But Baun, 6 tackles, and not just the 6 tackles, but the guy stopped 2 big-time possible touchdowns from happening as he tackled Miles Sanders as Sanders almost got away, and Baun was able to stop him there. And then, of course, he broke up a big-time passing touchdown as well, where that could have altered the game in a big way. So Zack Baun really all over the field, being, up when he needed to, and also being back when he needed to as well, where, again, he tackled Miles Sanders on that big run he had, the biggest run of the night for Sanders. And when that happened, well, what happened shortly after that play, that tackle on Miles Sanders? Well, the Eagles were able to get a fumble, and they were able to get the ball back. So it all kind of ties together. And with Zack Baun, without a question, is my defensive player of the game, and without a doubt, probably is my player of the game for the guy that stepped up in a huge way. That and Jalen Hurts. It's kind of hard to go. I don't necessarily want to go completely out saying Zack Baun is the complete player of the game, as Hurts, as we're going to get to in a little bit, played a huge piece in this victory for the Birds. So I don't know if I'll go over above and say Zack Baun was the complete player of the game, but definitely on defense, yeah, he was the POG 100%. But now let's move on to the rest of the defense as we kind of get into more of the nitty-gritty of the defense. And yes, was it a little bit of concerning for the Eagles defense yesterday? Well, yes, but again, you have to remember it's week 1 and there's week 1 jitters, and we saw that, of course, on both sides of the ball. We saw it on Dallas. We saw it on Philly. We saw it on both offense and defense for both teams. It was all over. So this is the type of situation where there were good plays, there were bad plays. And, of course, some good plays that happened were the Jihad Campbell and Byron Young who forced the fumble on Miles Sanders. And, of course, who was there to pick it up? Well, none other than Quinyon Mitchell, who was able to get that big pickup. And then, of course, well, what happened after that? Well, the Eagles kind of went into a little bit of an hour lightning delay. But we won't talk about that. We'll talk about what happened prior, as, yes, a great forced fumble right there as Dallas was threatening again in the red zone and using that run game, of course, giving it to Miles Sanders. And Miles Sanders kind of did something that, let's just say, here in Philadelphia, we've kind of seen him do it before. We're fumbling it in key situations, especially in the red zone. So this is kind of something where, yeah, if you watch the Eagles back when Sanders was on it, you'll kind of be brought back to that after what you saw yesterday out of Sanders. So I'll just leave it at that. So there were some good moments, but there were also moments from a guy like this, Adoree Jackson. And yes, you already know it. I don't need to go huge in detail on it. Was not a great game for Adoree Jackson, was getting burnt like crazy. As for the rest of the secondary, there were some shaky times for Quinyon Mitchell, Makuba as well, where Makuba, he's still developing himself, right? And especially with the injury to Sidney Brown, who knows? Makuba's probably going to be out there a heck of a lot more. So you're going to be seeing a lot more of that young kid as well, and he's still got time to develop. But as well for here, looking at Adoree Jackson, not great. And this picture right here kind of describes what I'm talking about. If you didn't necessarily see too much of the game, well, this is what I'm talking about right here. You can clearly see just from this picture, and you can tell, I don't even need to play a video. You can see that Adoree Jackson was not necessarily covering where he was supposed to, and it was kind of a blown coverage situation. So, yes, not great. And not only was it blown coverage, but they put Adoree Jackson on CeeDee Lamb. So, not exactly what I would have done, and I'm not quite sure what the strategy was there. Of course, a lot of people were saying, where the heck is Jacorian Bennett? That was a big question that came up during yesterday, and I really asked it the same thing. Why is Jacorian Bennett not out there? Now, he did play a couple of snaps, but it was only about a few, I should say. It was around a few snaps Jacorian Bennett played. Adoree Jackson was sat on the bench during the mid portion of the game, but then he returned once again and continued to not stick on his guy. Now, of course, a lot of things about Jacorian Bennett have been said where, he's got the speed, but, sometimes he's not the greatest with pass breakups. Well, he outplayed Adoree Jackson in preseason. I understand Jacorian Bennett is not the best thing in the world. He's not the best corner in the world. I understand that. I'm not saying he's, the biggest gift from God, in general, okay? I'm not going to go there. But off of what I've seen in the preseason, Jacorian Bennett has been incredibly better than what Adoree Jackson has put on. I mean, heck, yesterday, the way things are going, I'd rather have Kelly Ringo in there. And so this is kind of that situation where is Adoree Jackson kind of that Jordan Romano of the Philadelphia Eagles? Phillies fans, you'll know exactly what I mean with that reference. But this is something where was definitely a little concerning, and the way the Eagles secondary was last night was definitely concerning. I mean, when the opposing team's best wide receiver, CeeDee Lamb, has 4 drops, you have to kind of say, okay, we got a little lucky right there. And of course, yeah, it happened on the last play of the game for Dallas. What happened? Well, Dak Prescott, as much as I can't stand him, and as much as I think he can be overrated at the majority of times, he made some pretty incredible throws right in the breadbasket of his receivers, especially CeeDee Lamb, and especially that last play of the game for Dallas on that 4th down. That throw was incredible. It was a great dime right in the breadbasket of CeeDee Lamb. And what happened? Well, it went right in between his forearms. So this is something where, yeah, did the Eagles get lucky at times? Yes. Were there times where they laid on good hits against the Cowboys and pressured them well? Yes. So this is one of those situations where there was bad, but there was also good. And this is something where, again, it's week 1. You saw it was shaky on both sides of the ball, on both sides, both teams. We saw it with the offense for Dallas. We saw it with the defense of Philly. We also saw some jitters with the defense of Dallas, and we saw jitters with the offense of Philly. So this is all things that are going to happen in week 1, right? And, we'll just have to see. Hopefully Vic Fangio, and you already know Vic Fangio is not going to let this stuff slide, especially what happened with the defensive line and how Dallas was rushing that up. You already know that the defensive line is not going to be that lackadaisical moving forward, and Vic Fangio is definitely going to have a lot to say about that performance, and he's definitely going to have it somewhat tightened up as the weeks maneuver forward. We know that for sure, especially knowing Vic Fangio's past and how strict he is. I don't think it's going to last too much longer. At least let's cross our fingers, right? But let's move on now to Jalen Hurts' play. So, of course, yesterday, Jalen Hurts, yes, let's go right into it. His stats for passing, 19 out of 23 for 152 yards. No passing touchdowns, but yeah, Hurts definitely used his legs. He had 14 rushing attempts for 62 yards, and of course, the 2 rushing touchdowns that first got the Eagles on the board. And yes, he had more rushing yards than Saquon Barkley. I know that. And of course, the haters are coming out saying, here comes your running back. Oh, excuse me, your quarterback. Yeah, I got to hear that from a bunch of people during some text last night. I sure enjoyed that. But again, I like having a quarterback that can get the job done in clutch situations. When he's forced to run, he can run. When he's forced to throw, like what we saw this past Super Bowl, he can throw. So this is the type of situation where I like a quarterback that can get the job done, not a quarterback that makes it look very, very pretty every single time, but fails in the moment when it's most necessary. Yeah, I'd rather have Jalen Hurts. He did an incredible thing, incredible plays yesterday. Really helped win the game for the Birds, and was probably the big reason. Like I said, there were some guys that contributed extremely well on defense, but Jalen Hurts overall was the guy that really got the job done and got the Eagles that big time W. It's a team sport, but Hurts really played his rear end off, and I'm very happy to see it. So great game from Jalen Hurts. Overall, his QB mental timer, I think, has improved as well with knowing when it's okay to stay in the pocket and when it's time to escape the pocket. Yes, he did get a sack. He did get sacked yesterday once, but this is something where, he's still really showing off, what he's all about and his improvements. Can't wait to see what the rest of the year holds for Jalen Hurts. But now moving on to the rest of the offense, and a guy that I definitely have to highlight. And yeah, this position doesn't necessarily get talked about enough. Got to talk about the punter, Brandon Mann. An incredible game yesterday. Kept it out of the Dallas returning it for more than 2 times. I think it was around 3 times or so, maybe even more, that Brandon Mann was able to get the punt right down the field and get it out of bounds just in time to get it down to sometimes the Dallas around just under the Dallas 15-yard line or around the Dallas 15-yard line. So incredible punts by Brandon Mann yesterday for a position that doesn't get recognized, in my opinion, enough for how good the kicks can be. Brandon Mann definitely holding Dallas down there at the far part of the field and helping out the Eagles defense to get good pressure on Prescott and that offense. That is for sure. So great game by Brandon Mann. But of course, for the rest of the offense, got to highlight once again these two guys. I know I just talked about Jalen Hurts, but a great game. The run game was the reason that the Eagles got it done. Of course, you already know A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Yeah, they weren't used that much yesterday. And yeah, you want to say not used that much. A.J. Brown only got 1 target and he only got 1 reception for 8 yards. So I would say that's not a lot. Devontae Smith, 3 receptions for 16 yards. And the guy that got the most amount of yards from passes was Jahan Dotson with a 55-yard completion from Jalen Hurts, which really got Dotson's day going. So, yeah, A.J. Brown, only 1 reception. These two guys are really the ones contributing most on the offense was, yes, the rushing game, as Saquon Barkley had 18 attempts for 60 yards. He also had a touchdown. So, yeah, the touchdowns were Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley yesterday. And, of course, we had other contributions from guys like Will Shipley, who had 3 carries for 26 yards, and A.J. Dillon had a little bit in there as well, 3 carries for 10 yards. So it was mostly, the Eagles' rushing game yesterday, even though Dallas was starting to really hone down on it, especially in the fourth quarter where they practically had 7 guys honing down in on Saquon Barkley, where, the rush game kind of stopped a little bit, where there were only 3 points scored in the entire second half. And, let's just be happy that the 3 points were scored by the Birds and not the Cowgirls, but definitely a great game to witness right there. Wasn't necessarily, I'd say, the prettiest thing in the world, but what week 1 game usually is pretty. I'll let you think about that one for a little bit. But yeah, what does that mean? Well, week 2 coming up here. The Eagles go up against the Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City. This is definitely going to be an interesting matchup. It's a Super Bowl rematch. Will the Birds be able to take care of Kansas City come next week? Well, we'll just have to wait and find out. Hopefully, Jalen Hurts and the Birds will be ready to go to take on Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. We'll see what happens. And let's just hope the Birds can come out on top in one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. It's going to be a chore, but I have confidence that the Birds will be able to get the job done and will make the Philadelphia faithful proud, as they already are, of the Philadelphia Eagles. But that is all for me. And as always, go Birds! The Eagles off to a 1-0 start. We'll see what they can do next week to hopefully improve and get a little bit of a winning streak going, as NFL season is already back and going. Have a good one, folks.